How's it going, guys? Tego from SGN back with another Mortal Kombat video, and after the last video I put up, which was me ranking each and every Mortal Kombat game from the main series from worst to best, there were a lot of questions coming out, like why I put this game there and, stuff like that. And unfortunately, with the video of that format, with so many games to cover, so many things to say about just about every single game, there was only so much time I could put into each and every individual game, and there was only so much detail I can go into. So this new series called Tales of Mortal Kombat is going to be me talking about every single MK game from the main series and telling you exactly what I like about them, what I think is kind of bad about them, and giving you a fully detailed reasoning behind why I put those games there. I'm going to be covering every single game, starting off from MK1, ending with MKX, and hopefully you guys will stick around and you will enjoy it. And before I get into the video, I want to give two shout-outs. Number one to Judgment Fist for, as always, providing me with some great art and doing some really cool stuff with MK9 especially. She does a lot of work, putting in her own modified versions of characters from MK9, or also bringing in MKX models into MK9 and making them playable through mods and stuff like that. So definitely go check her out. I will leave all her links in the description down below. Really cool stuff and a really good person. Also, I want to give a big shout out to Madoda, a guy who's been commenting on pretty much all my videos, who's been giving me a lot of likes, who's been really giving me a lot of support, and I very much appreciate every single one of you guys. I'm going to be doing this a lot more often, every video, giving props, giving a shout out to the people that have really been supporting this channel, and I appreciate you in a way that you probably don't understand. Not in a gay way. Definitely not in a gay way. But I appreciate the hell out of you guys, so thank you so much for watching, and hopefully you guys will stick around. So let's go ahead and get right into the video, starting off with MK1, as I said. MK1, what can I say about it? Came out in 1992, a time where in the arcade everything was booming. That was a great time for video games. Of course, I wasn't alive, but based on everything I've heard, it was a tremendous time to really be a part of a community of video game players. Nowadays, online, there's a lot of it, of course. People love playing online, but I'm not part of those people. I've always been more of a fan of playing with my buddies, having that interaction inside a room and just hanging out together and playing video games. Playing online is really cool. I love competitive multiplayer and say like Halo and stuff like that. But as I've gotten older, and of course I'm still very young, but as I've gotten older over the past few years, since like 2007, I've gotten less and less interested. I think the last game that I truly played online, like constantly trying to play competitively, was probably Halo Reach, to be honest with you. Like, I played a bunch of Halo 4, but never at the same level. Of course, FIFA. I play a lot of FIFA online, but that's different, And I think that's something that people are starting to lose a little bit nowadays, is the fact that it's that interaction, being in the same place playing a lot of video games. And MK1, and of course all the other arcade Mortal Kombat games, but in particular MK1, based on what I've heard from people like Total MK and other people that do a lot of YouTube videos, this was kind of the boom moment for games like this, fighting games in arcades, and it must have been amazing. And for that community to be so strong and so many things to come out of that, it really was amazing. But the first thing I want to mention here is the presentation of the game. All right, the first thing that you pretty much recognize with every time you go to play a game is the presentation. So the menus, the music, all that stuff. And it really does play a big factor into how much interest you have in that game. And Mortal Kombat immediately hit you. The graphic style of it was very unique. Obviously, all the characters were basically digitized human beings. All of the arenas were actual photographs of places that were just inserted into games. So it was all very, very unique. And the art style of it was very unique, but also the music was very good. I think there's plenty of people are going to remember the first time they heard that MK1 tune, and it's something that you'll always remember when you're a Mortal Kombat fan. So there's definitely a lot of great presentation there. And in terms of, games of that era, for me personally, it's easily the one that I recognize the most. There's just something extremely recognizable about it, between the art style, the music. So the presentation was just phenomenal. Like I said, the graphics were very, very interesting. They were very innovative for that time period as well, because most people were using just really bad graphics, and the way that they managed to digitize actual human beings, so they actually had good animations, because they weren't actual animations. They were actual people doing moves. So it all of course it was a slow game, but it all felt very fluid. Everything was looking like it was real. It was very well done. And overall, like I said, it was a very, very unique and innovative thing. And it was just extremely memorable. The next thing I want to say is the story. I can't remember a single fighting game that was out around then. Like I said, I wasn't alive back then. But of course, based on what I've seen and based on the research I've done, there were no actual games that, from what I've seen, that actually had a developing storyline like Mortal Kombat did, especially in terms of fighting games. Of course, there were all the other genres, stuff like that. They were already building up RPGs and things like that, so there were obviously games with story. But in terms of fighting games, Mortal Kombat was very much unique in the way that they introduced the story, because it wasn't just a backstory. And of course, with the next game with MK2, MK3, all that stuff, things started to develop and it actually started to form an actual story. And of course, it's kind of hard to get that from MK1. But if you look at it, there was something developing there. So it was very unique in that point, in that sense. And it was very, very interesting, the fact that they had such a detailed storyline in a fighting game in 1992. It was something that you didn't really see very often, or ever, really. And it really was the basis of what was going to make Mortal Kombat great, because it wasn't just a game that you could sit there and you could play with a buddy, something like that. You could have some fun like that. But it was also something you could dive into from a storyline point of view and really learn about the universe, which is something that's very, very, very important to mention when you talk about Mortal Kombat, in my opinion. Moving on to the gameplay, and of course, if you play the game now, you're going to find the game extremely slow, extremely, I'm not going to say rough to play, but definitely rough around the edges. It's not all that amazing, but for the time, the fact that there were no combo systems, of course, kind of takes away from how fast it could be and how fluid it was. But at the time, it was very, very interesting to play, because, of course, there was so much shock value to the blood, to the special moves and all that. But most importantly, it became kind of like a game of wits, because with combo games, games with deep combo systems, it really does become a game of skill. Like, who is able to pull off these big combos and really put somebody in the corner and not allow them to get out of that situation. Whereas if you're doing something along the lines of, a game like Mortal Kombat 1, where everything is all about knowing timing, knowing when to do things, and really not allowing your opponent to do what they want to do, that kind of turns into a battle of wits. So that, compared to every other Mortal Kombat game that's come out, basically made it unique, except for maybe Mortal Kombat 2, because there still wasn't a real combo system. It was a bit better. It was a lot more fluid, but there still wasn't like a deep combo system. So Mortal Kombat 1 was very much unique in terms of gameplay as well. Like I said, if you play it now, you're not going to experience it if you haven't already played the game before. So if you're a new Mortal Kombat fan, or you're new, just somebody in general just playing Mortal Kombat 1 for the very first time in 2018, you're going to think the game is garbage. But if you played it back then, or at least when games weren't as developed, even like towards the Deadly Alliance era, you're going to understand how fun the game was and how much it was actually impactful for all fighting games in general. And of course, you can't not mention the fatalities when you're talking about Mortal Kombat 1, because that was really what gave the game the push. Like, the gameplay was fun, it was cool and all, the graphics, all the presentation, but what really stuck in people's minds were the fatalities. Not just even that, it was also the special moves, because even the special moves were pretty brutal. There were certain ones that really stick to your mind that were just really brutal, and also they were extremely cool, like Scorpion's spear move, which is definitely representing, it's something that people have always remembered. It's always been a big, a cultural moment in video game history. Everybody remembers the spear. Everybody remembers Sub-Zero using his ice move. Everybody remembers the fireballs. Everybody remembers the projectiles by Shang Tsung. They're just things that you stick in your mind, and you always remember, because they're actually extremely cool, and they're actually extremely functional to put together too. It's not like a lot of games, like, it's extremely complicated. You have to do like crazy movements to do everything. It's actually just 2 movements plus a button, sometimes 3. But overall, it's easy to pull off, and it's extremely fun to do and really cool to see. And another thing you have to mention is the fact that it was just such a secret. Everything you had to unlock in that game, everything you had to figure out, it was all through gameplay. There were no like ways to just figure it out. Like, there were no little button tabs, something telling you exactly what to do and stuff like that. So it was extremely fun to learn. And one last thing I want to say about the fatalities, like I said, it was extremely shocking, and it really was what really made Mortal Kombat this big global phenomenon, because nobody ever seen something like that, especially in an arcade. Of course, there were only games like that, of course, but like, nobody ever seen something like that. It was amazing, seeing Sub-Zero do the spine rip, or seeing Kano rip out your heart. It was shocking. It was amazing. It was badass, if you like that kind of stuff. And it really did introduce a new era of video games, and it really did have a huge impact and changed the history of video gaming forever, because it introduced the rating system, it introduced the ESRB. It really did make people stop and think, okay, video games are clearly going to a different path. Video games are clearly capable of doing things that we didn't expect them to be capable of. It's not some little thing that's just for kids and stuff like that, which was a lot of people, especially adults, were thinking of around that time. Like older people, in their 40 to 50s. I'm not talking about young people in the generation who were growing up with video games present. I'm talking about people that were from the 50s, 60s, who hadn't really understood what a video game could possibly be. You know what I'm saying? So once they started to see that, it was like, okay, this isn't just for kids. This is clearly something that adults are also going to be having games built for them too. So Mortal Kombat really did have a big impact in shaping what gaming culture was going to be for the next, for the next decade, essentially. And of course, they took it to the next level with their future games. But Mortal Kombat 1, you cannot take away how important that game was for video game history. So whether you love the game, whether you dislike it, whatever you think about it, you cannot deny the importance that game had in video gaming history, and it's just such an amazing game, especially because of that. Moving on, the last thing I want to say, except for one other thing, and I want to get into this before, it is the characters. The characters, each and every character in Mortal Kombat was extremely good, except for maybe Sonya. But of course, Sonya being the only female character there, being such a badass because she was killing people as well, it really was cool. And everybody I actually liked Sonya back then. I liked Sonya in MK1. I pretty much liked her all the way until, I don't know, maybe like Deception or something like that. Or, yeah, more or less Armageddon. Because she wasn't annoying. She was, she had her purpose there. And of course, now it's all overplayed out, and I do hope that she doesn't come back in MK11. But all the characters that were in MK1 all turned out to be iconic characters that people still love to this day, except, like I said, because of Sonya, because they've kind of just made her a bitch. They've really made her annoying, and there's really just nothing interesting about her anymore, so that does kind of ruin it. But all the other characters in that list, whether it be, it's Johnny Cage, Kano, Sub-Zero, Sonya, Raiden, Liu Kang, and Scorpion. All of these characters have gone on to be iconic characters, especially, of course, Scorpion and Sub-Zero, but they've all become iconic characters that are recognizable not just to Mortal Kombat fans, but also to all of gaming fans. If you're a fighting game fan, you know who those characters are, and pretty much in gaming in general, you know who at least Scorpion, Sub-Zero, and Raiden are, and even Liu Kang. You are guaranteed to know who those characters are, because they are iconic. They're very awesome. And the cool thing about that was, yes, of course, the power swap between the ninjas, whereas it was kind of just making them, I'm not going to say like identical, but from a look point of view, there was just a yellow ninja and a blue ninja. So a lot of people say that they aren't unique, but if you look at the way they are, the way they play, everything about them, it is very unique. Very, very unique. Of course, moving forward, that becomes a little bit less and less unique, but definitely for Mortal Kombat 1, the way that they were, all the characters were so unique, so fun to play, so different, so cool, and everything about them just really made them iconic, and it's awesome to see that, 26 years down the line, these characters are still beloved, are still so fun to play as, and there's still so much you can do with them except for Sonya. And moving on to the last thing I want to mention, it is secrets. And honestly, like the thing that really made Mortal Kombat so unique, made this game so amazing for so long, was the secrets to the game. In particular, like I said, obviously, the fact that Fatalities, there was no way to figure them out except for unless you were playing them, or unless maybe you were in the arcade and all of a sudden somebody pulled off a Fatality, you asked them and maybe they told them, but for the most part, everybody kept those moves and kept those combinations, the buttons, a secret. They didn't want other people to know that. So it was all about playing, trial and error, spending all that coinage to see if you could figure it out, and it was just so badass. Of course, once the internet came around, people started to figure that a bit more, but still, like, it was such a secret. Everything about it was so unique. You had to really figure it out yourself, and that really made it badass. But obviously, the number one secret you have to mention for not just, I would say, Mortal Kombat, but also in video game history is Reptile. So many things in the fall into the right order, and so many things in the fall into place for you to be able to experience that. There were so many clues for Reptile. You had to do certain things. The clouds in the pit. You had to get a perfect, I think it was, like not get touched on the pit stage. It was just such a badass combination of so many things. And then when you finally fight Reptile, everybody was like, what the fuck is this Reptile stuff? They're probably just teasing you or something like that. And then all of a sudden, Reptile pops down in the pit, and you're in a war with the guy who is faster than you, he's stronger than you, he has pretty much all the moves. It was just such a badass moment, and I can't even imagine how amazing it must have been for somebody to finally experience that for the first time in the arcades. So many things just happening. It must have been an amazing moment, something that, I don't know, dude, it must have been just a truly phenomenal time for people to experience that. Everybody around him being like, what the fuck is that? Out of nowhere. It must have been truly amazing. So the secrets to Mortal Kombat have always been huge, and this one in particular, it's going to be close to just about everybody's heart because it was the first one, and nobody will ever forget, just how amazing it was for Reptile once they experienced it. I've actually never been able to pull that off in the video games and the home consoles. Never pulled it off, and the fact that, of course, thankfully the internet exists, so I have seen it happen. But it must have been so amazing for somebody to finally pull it off in the arcade, have everybody see it, and just must have been a truly phenomenal moment for the person that pulled it off. It must have felt like a real badass. There's not a lot of times when you're playing a video game where you feel like a badass, but I bet that was definitely one of them. And going into the cons, because of course, these videos are going to include some cons, and these are my notes right here. There's only really one thing I can think of, and this is the fact that if you play the game in 2018, like I said, it doesn't hold up very well, just because, of course, it was a game that came out in 1992. It was the first game in their series. They didn't have a big budget. It was like 3 dudes developing the game. So you can't really expect the game to be transcendent if you're just starting to play it for the first time in 2018. But like I said, if you're somebody who's played the game before, who played it in the old days, in the 90s or even in the early 2000s, then you know what the game was like. You know that the game was so amazing for its timepiece. and it was amazing. And really, this is a con, but not really a con. Like, the game is phenomenal. The game is awesome to play, especially, like I said, if you've already played the game back in the day. For the nostalgia factor, everything about it's really fun to play. So this game really, really is good. But of course, I can't put it on the same level as MK2 or I would say better than MK3, but it's definitely not MK2 levels because MK2 was just phenomenal. I'll cover that in the next video. But regardless, there was so many amazing things about Mortal Kombat 1. And I hope that you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, please let me know in the comment section down below what you think about the things I mentioned. What do you think about MK1? Do you think it's awesome? What do you think about it? If you enjoyed the video, please smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified every single time I have a video. That way you're one click away from watching said video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the next one with Mortal Kombat 2.